Hello makers, and welcome to Share Stitchery. I'm Katherine Harris, and I do sewing and DIY tutorials each week. So if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you know when I have any new uploads. This week, I thought we'd talk about the Nova Raglan sweater by Sinclair Patterns. And it just so happens that it also happens to be the Sew My Style 2020 April edition. So, let's get to it.
Bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum. Now starting with the pocket. So we're going to take piece number 9, which is the pocket piece, and piece number 10, which are the pocket bands. And you can make the bands out of French terry, which is what I'm using for my main sweater, or you could do it out of the ribbing fabric. And so you've got 2 notches on both the pocket and the bands, which denounce the middle of the pocket. So you're going to pin that first, and then you're going to pin either end, and then you're going to distribute that extra fabric in between, because the pocket band is slightly smaller than the total curvature of that pocket line. And you're going to stitch that in place and serge it to clean up the ends, and then you're going to press it with the seams pointing inwards and top stitch that. When that's done, you are going to fold in the top and the sides, because we're going to attach it to the front of our hoodie. So you're going to take your front piece out and make sure you've got all of your markings placed on there. I've got a little blue dot to denounce the middle of the pocket and where the top comes. And so then we are just going to stitch on the end, and a stitch in the ditch foot is actually really handy to have when you're stitching on there, because you can get nice and close and nice and straight. But we're going to pin that in place. And then I'm just pinning the bottom of the pocket as well, and I'm stitching that on as well. It doesn't say to do that in the instructions, but I find it's just a little bit easier when you do that. So you're going to stitch along there, and then at the ends you're going to create a little triangle, and what that does is it creates a little extra sturdiness. So you can see the triangles here, and it's similar to what doing a bar tack is, just a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Next is the sleeves. So we're going to take piece number 3, and you're going to have a notch in one of the sides. That is to indicate the front panel, because there's also a notch on the raglan sleeve on the front side. So you're going to match up those notches and pin in place, and then just stitch both of the front sleeves in place here. And just getting that all in. And then don't forget to serge the ends as well. So I stitch and then I serge. And then what I did is I pressed the seams towards the sleeve, and then I top stitched that. Next, you're going to take the undersleeve and you're going to attach that to the back side. And just matching up those curves and pinning it in place. And don't go down the side seams yet. You're just going to want to do the shoulders of the raglan right now. And now you've got a nice little circle for your neck hole, and it's starting to look a lot more like a sweatshirt. Now for the hood. Now this is optional. I decided to include it because I do like hoodies with a hood. And first we're going to insert the eyelets, or if you would like, you could also do a buttonhole. I'm just putting in a piece of muslin to act as an interfacing to add some stability to the eyelet rivet. And I'm just going to use my pliers here. You could also use a hammer and a tool that comes with it. I just find the pliers a little bit easier. You just squeeze down on that. And then we are going to place the right sides of the hood together and just sew along that curved part, both on the lining and the main hood fabric. So you're only going to put the eyelets or the buttonholes in the top, so not the lining. Next, we're going to match up the seams. I like to match them up where you interlock the seams. So one seam is pressed one way, one seam is pressed the other way. And then I'm going to put double pins in there, and I stitch over those pins when I stitch because it helps to keep those seams perfectly aligned. So we're just going to pin all the way down, and then we're going to stitch all the way around the edge of the hood. And now that that is done, let's flip the hood right side out. And you can see how it's starting to come along here. So the next thing that we are going to do is we're going to give it a nice good press, and then you are going to understitch along the wrong side. So on the lining, you're going to understitch with the seam pressed towards the lining side. That way when we flip it out, it's going to roll that seam towards the inside, and you're not going to see the edge of that seam on the right side. Now I'm just pinning all of this in place to make sure that everything is lying exactly as I want it to. And the next thing that we are going to do is we're going to get out our seam gauge, and we're going to measure 1.5 inches. And we're just going to mark that all along the edge here, because this is going to be our top stitching line to create that channel for our drawstring. I'm just continuing to go in and mark that all along the edge of the hood. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to draw a solid line, which is going to be my stitching line. And I'm just using a water-soluble pen here. You can also use the vanishing one as well, or some chalk, depending on what type of fabric you have. So that's all been stitched and ready to go. And now we're going to do the overlap for the hood. Now I must confess, I'm not a big fan of having a larger overlap on the hood. I find it a little too bulky, especially if I'm using it as a layering piece. But if I'm using it as a coat, I do like to have that overlap. So I'm just matching up the notches, and then I'm going to stitch there. And the next part here, we are going to create the drawstring. Now you can use pre-made drawstring, or I decided to use one that is made out of the same ribbing that I'm using on the bottom and the arm cuffs, so that it has a bit of a matching feel to it. And you're just going to put right sides together along the lengthwise, stitch that, and then pull it through using a safety pin. And then should be good, and I pressed mine as well, and then I just fed it through using a safety pin and pulled the string right through that eyelet, and then distributed the fabric evenly across there. So I'm just pushing it through. My string is a little thick for the eyelets I maybe will do bigger eyelets next time. Now we are going to attach the hood to the sweater. So you're going to place right sides together, and then you're going to match up the seams and the notches just along the neckline there. And get that all pinned in place. And with this, you really want to make sure that you got the front center because you do have that overlap, and it will be noticeable if it's off center. And I've stitched and serged, and then I've also top stitched along the top. Next is the side seams. So we're just going to stitch all the way along the side seam and up along the arms, and then I also serged. Next is the bottom band and the cuffs. So you're going to take the bottom band, you're going to put right sides together, and then you're going to stitch and serge that one end, and then you're going to fold it wrong sides together, so both right sides are facing out. And then we are going to flip our sweater right side out, and then we are going to place our band on top of the sweater. And so the band is actually smaller than the sweater, so you're going to have to do some stretching when you stitch so that it lays nicely. And so I like to pin the centers and the sides and then stretch out the middle pieces and just pop little pins in there. So when that's done, I serge, and then I also top stitch along the bottom edge just to hold everything in place. And so now it's been top stitched, and I've given it a nice good press, and our bottom band You just stitch right in the ditch there and it should be finished. Next are the cuffs. So you're going to fold those in half as well. So you'll have a long tube and then you're going to fold that in half with wrong sides together. So the right sides are facing out. And then you're going to pop your cuff on and you'll have the raw edges matching. And just make sure that that seam that you have is along the bottom of your cuff. You don't want to have that seam on the top or kind of janky in the middle somewhere. And then just stitch all the way around and serge that. And I also top stitched this, pressing the seams towards the sweater.
There you have it. A nice, cute sweatshirt. So a couple of points on the pattern. I absolutely love the fit on this. I didn't have to make any adjustments whatsoever. I did use ribbing for the cuffs and the bottom, but I think I'm going to try another one with the exact same fabric because I think it'll give a nice cleaner look. If I could find ribbing to match my fabric, this one happens to be from Minerva and the ribbing from Marshall's Fabrics, then I think that would be a lot better. I think I just need to search a little bit more online for that. The next point is I wish that the hood was a 3-piece hood as opposed to a 2-piece hood. I always find that having that gusset going down the middle makes the hood just fit a little bit better. Other than that, I absolutely love the pocket and I think I'm going to make quite a few more. Until next time, makers, let's get our Sew-Spiration on.